Welcome to the Behind the Connection podcast, the podcast that covers all things internet and technology related. The good, the bad, the complexities, and the realities. We talk about it all right here on Behind the Connection. I'm Tyler Rasmussen, and I'm your host. So, gentlemen, 2020 has officially come to an end. Is that a good thing?
I think in most people's view, yes.
It all depends on how 2021 goes.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we're looking forward to 2021 for sure. Yeah, today we want to talk a little bit about what we've been able to get done this past year at STRATA Networks and improving and delivering broadband to the Uintah Basin. Before we do that, though, we definitely need to introduce our guests. We've got a first-timer with us here today who I can't quite see because I've got a whole bunch of audio mechanisms between myself and Dave. We'll be doing some head bobbing today, so forgive us. Dave, can you give us a quick introduction?
Of me?
Please, of yourself. That would be fantastic.
So Dave Ryan with STRATA, plant design manager.
What does that mean?
So my roles are typically involved with strategic planning, engineering, construction, rights-of-way and land management, and warehousing, procurement.
So you're one of the guys that helps decide where fiber's getting built?
Yes. I have input into that process.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Dave. Glad to have you on.
Thank you.
And John Bingham, he's been on with us before, but for those that haven't maybe heard previous episodes, John, give us a quick introduction.
Yeah, I'm John Bingham. I'm the engineering supervisor at STRATA Networks. And my engineering team, we will be designing any of the fiber projects and other projects, whether it be copper, fiber, coax, and also have some input on as far as where we build and some of the prioritization of different projects.
Good. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that today because I'm sure folks are pretty interested in how we make some of those determinations. So we'll cover that briefly. So we try to boil things down on this podcast and not make it too complex so that the everyday consumer can kind of understand what we're talking about a little bit. And we've already mentioned fiber, coax, copper. So just very briefly, why don't the two of you tell the listener what is the significance of those three at a high level? When we're talking about those three, what does that mean?
Well, ultimately, fiber optics are the ultimate broadband connection medium. But we also have a significant amount of infrastructure that exists throughout the Uintah Basin in both coax and copper plant. So we have different broadband and internet connection capabilities on each of those platforms. But ultimately, we're trying to move everyone to fiber on a fairly aggressive plan over the next few years.
Great. Sounds good. So, and we've mentioned in previous podcasts too that we use also some wireless technologies as well when we don't have a good solution with an actual wired connection, right? With fiber, copper, coax, we use 4G LTE or point to multi-point wireless, some other solutions. So STRATA is using a variety of technologies to provide the best solution that is available in a variety of different geographic locations throughout the Uintah Basin.
Right.
Okay, so we'll hit on some statistics of what the teams here at STRATA have been able to get done this past year throughout this podcast. But most importantly, I think we want to make sure that we're communicating to the listener the importance of a fiber connection and our efforts and emphasis as an organization to try to get fiber deployed to as many locations as we possibly can, as quickly as we possibly can, and to give you some insight on how you can get involved in that process. I think these two gentlemen, as they'll talk throughout this podcast, you'll see that at times it's a little bit of a tough decision to decide where to deploy resources to build fiber plant. And by the end of this podcast, you'll see how you can get engaged in that process and help direct our efforts a little bit. So demand for fiber optics is obviously increasing significantly, not only in the Uintah Basin, but all across the U.S. and the world. And And I think we all understand that COVID has pushed us into a whole new world, really, since March of last year, specifically here in the Uintah Basin. We have more students than ever that were doing schoolwork from home, right? And I know my kids. I've had 2 kids that have got sent home because they were directly exposed to somebody with COVID at least 2 different times, and they've had to work from home and do their schoolwork, and that requires a good broadband connection. When we say broadband, we mean internet. More and more, obviously, employees are working from home. We're starting to see, and I'm sure realtors and others are seeing this as well, but we're starting to see more consumers that are moving away from a metropolitan-based lifestyle and moving back to a rural setting, assuming that there's a broadband connection that will facilitate them working from a rural setting, correct?
Yeah.
So, more and more, especially like I said, with COVID over the past 9 months, it's becoming normalized to do more work from home. And once again, fiber is necessary for most of that. So let's talk a little bit about, we're just going to review quickly some of the key highlights from this past year. And I think John's got a few visual resources that he's going to show as we go through this. John, do you want to dive into these? Let's start with Reconnect, and I'll kind of tee this up and you can talk about where we're at. So when we say Reconnect, some of the listeners may remember that earlier this year, just before COVID was kind of taking over the Uintah Basin, STRATA was really pleased to hear that the USDA had selected STRATA to receive a large sum of money in the form of a loan and a grant to build fiber to many of the about 3,000 outlying locations in the Uintah Basin, and we want to give the listeners an update on where we're at with that. Dave, do you want to mention more specifically about what that program is? Are there any other details you want to mention there?
Yeah, so there's actually been a second round, which we'll talk about as well, but there's a program where funds have been allocated to the USDA through the RUS arm of USDA, the Rural Utility Service. And so this program gives entities the opportunity to apply for either a grant or a combination of a loan and a grant or just a loan. And STRATA was able to submit an application and successfully be awarded for that last year, as you mentioned. And we have also applied for we've submitted a secondary application for the round 2, and we have not yet heard whether we have been selected for that one. But if so, either way, it provides significant enhancement and acceleration of our fiber overbuilds in the most rural portions of the Uintah Basin.
Yeah, so we've hit on this briefly, but sometimes some people might ask, well, why does STRATA need a grant or a loan to build fiber in the Uintah Basin? Why aren't you just doing it on your own? Johnny, do you want to hit on that quickly?
Yeah, it is an expensive process to get fiber to a home, and in these rural areas, it just gets more and more expensive. You're talking 1 or 2 homes every mile versus in a more urban area where, especially in some of the larger cities, where you put in a mile of fiber, you're passing thousands of locations versus in the rural setting, you're getting 1 or 2 homes maybe. Mm-hmm. And, this funding from the USDA, it's much the same way that, if you live in a rural area, much the same way your electricity arrived at your house and your phone line has been funded through similar programs in decades past. And the USDA can see the need for more than phone line. We need internet. Mm-hmm. And so they've made funds available for this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, as you've stated, there's many scenarios in a rural area like the Uintah Basin where economics will never work to run a fiber line to a location, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the monthly reoccurring rates that STRATA could charge a consumer for that service would be, they would not be affordable.
Yeah,
they would be astronomically high. And so these programs, once again, whether you like them or not, these programs exist. And if STRATA and our personnel can go out and secure these funds, it helps the people of the Uintah Basin get improved services more quickly and more affordably. So it's a good thing. So yeah, just a little more scope on that one. So approximately $600 million a year in this total fund, Reconnect Fund, that's allocated across the whole United States.
Yes.
Of which STRATA received a grant loan 50-50 split combo of $23.6 million. Is that what it was?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, once again, a very good shot in the arm. So where are we at with that? Have you guys started building? That's the magical question everybody wants to know.
It was exciting to have
John's got some pictures here.
Some of the USDA officials come out and do that announcement. And that was that in February last year?
Feels like about
February
4 years
2020.
ago. Huh?
So we're getting close to a year since that announcement was made. And,
so John, as you're thumbing through these pictures, maybe just say quickly where was that red barn in that first picture, and why was the announcement held there?
Yeah, one of the locations that are going to benefit from the funding that we received was a ranch owned by Dusty Olson in outside Neola, and he was generous enough to allow us to use his barn for our big announcement. The USDA had asked that we find a suitable location for an announcement like this, and this was a big deal, a very big deal for the Uintah Basin, and we were fortunate enough to be able to use Dusty Olson's place for this announcement. He was very gracious, and it was a great day to have that announced.
Yeah. Great. So yeah, Reconnect Round 2. Dave mentioned we have applied another $600 million or so that has basically to this point in the calendar year has already been awarded, mostly, correct? Right?
Yeah,
to other organizations throughout the U.S.
Correct. Yeah. So the total allocation to the program is that $600 million, roughly, and STRATA has submitted an additional application. We're still hopeful that we will be awarded for that one as well, which would reach an additional. John would know the exact number of another couple thousand locations in the remote portions of the Uintah Basin.
Great. Okay, awesome. That's a good one there. If anybody has more questions on Reconnect, so we didn't mention exactly where we're at. When do you expect plows to hit the ground on this one?
So John can.
You guys aren't dodging this question.
No, sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. No. I keep interrupting you.
John can speak more specifically to where we're at with the process, but there's a requirement for the funding that we accommodate a environmental and cultural study to be done, and so we're in the middle of that process right now. We've gone ahead and selected a firm to help us through that process, and they're working through doing surveys and evaluations of potential impacts, working with various entities, both locally and on the federal level. John can probably give us a better update on where we're at with all of that process.
Yeah, it's we are making progress. Every week we make a little bit of headway. It is agonizingly slow. We wanted to start placing the day that we announced it last February, but there are requirements that we're trying to meet. We definitely expect to be starting work this year.
Great.
So we'll be out in those rural areas this year.
I'm sure our hope would be that we get equipment rolling, in the good construction season, which would obviously be summer or spring, and
yes.
But that's our hope, and we'll continue to update the folks that will be impacted by that as we have more information. But just know that your STRATA people are working hard on that.
Tyler?
Yes, sir.
Just another comment on that. I think one of the questions that folks might have is, why don't you just get started on the areas where you don't have environmental concerns? Surely you don't have the same environmental concerns throughout the entire footprint of that the project is going to influence, and the answer is that's one of the requirements, is that all of the environmental studies have to be completed before we can begin construction on any other portion of the project. So
that makes sense.
That's been part of the delay, and anyway, I wanted to just clarify that here too.
Okay, great. All right, I think Johnny's got some other pictures up here of who is that on that machine? That looks that's Mr. Ryan. That's Dave right there.
I was trying to figure out which one goes forward and which one goes back.
Yeah, his guys were getting. I was there that day. His guys were getting a good chuckle at him trying to learn how to operate their machinery. But
Yeah, I was there for the comic relief.
That's
for the
right.
team, I think.
so maybe while John's showing us some of these images, Dave, talk a little bit about this next project that was significant that was completed in 2020 and what the benefits and benefits of this project are and the impacts.
Yeah, so as you can see in this photo, this particular section of this project we're going to talk about was coming up out of Flaming Gorge Dam, heading over towards Dutch John. So in 2020, we completed a project that many are probably aware of, to take fiber optics to the Manila High School in Manila and Flaming Gorge Elementary in Dutch John. And this was a project that was bid out through an RFP process by the Utah Education and Telehealth Network, and STRATA provided a bid and was selected to construct this project for them. And we completed that project in totality in August of this past year, 2020. So it was an awesome project. What the crews were able to accomplish there, to me, is just phenomenal. And we had a lot of great partnership and support from the community, state entities, and it turned out to be a great success.
Yeah, several partners on this one, right? Obviously the Utah Education and Telehealth Network, they're the main driver of this project, but the Utah Department of Transportation was hand in hand in this project, Bureau of Reclamation in helping allow us to cross the dam with fiber.
Yep.
Right. Forest Service, did I mention?
Yeah, the U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, both Uintah and Daggett County, as well as some other entities. A lot of the funding was secured by UETN through the FCC, through the E-rate program managed by the FCC. So there were a lot of moving pieces and a lot of parts. We also received quite a bit of support from the 7-County Coalition, which was instrumental in getting the project moving forward. So there were a lot of people that really helped, and it was a great joint effort.
So a substantial project for the people in Daggett County. I mean, this is huge for them in terms of obviously really facilitating an improved educational experience. But once fiber comes into a community, it does much more than that, right? Obviously, we mentioned several entities that are going to benefit from this with, whether it's weather and traffic cameras or better connectivity at the dam or improved backhaul capacity for cell sites that exist along that route. There's just a lot of benefits that come from a fiber project like this one. So this one's a significant one. And maybe eventually that also assists STRATA with an additional redundant path, correct? And when we say redundant, and you two know much more about this than I do, but the more routes out of the Uintah Basin that STRATA has, the more redundancy and security and strength it provides to the network in the event that there's a cut or a break in the fiber, which could happen with, a contractor and a backhoe at any point leaving the Uintah Basin. So I think, that adds another leg potentially to that redundancy, right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, let's jump into the ones that are more like the projects that are more directly benefiting consumers. John, why don't you just jump into those and you can go through them and maybe talk about some of the statistics overall of what's been accomplished?
We've been, along with, the projects like the Daggett County project and other projects, we've been going neighborhood to neighborhood building fiber, primarily fiber. Any project we do, we try to, any penny that we have to invest, we want to put it towards fiber. And obviously we're maintaining our copper and coax plants in the meantime. But in 2020, we placed fiber to 1,600 different locations throughout the Uintah Basin. And that's a pretty big number. For the size of company, the size of our crews, that's a pretty aggressive number. And we hope to exceed that again this year, actually. We placed, over 85 miles of fiber throughout the area. We now have in the Uintah Basin over 9,300 locations have fiber available right now, which is a big impact, making a big impact.
So in 2021, we're going to cross that 10,000 threshold, you're saying?
That'll be a big deal, yes.
Yeah, we're going to have a celebration of some sort. We're going to have to come up with something.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, we will.
So those are some big achievements, some big accomplishments. So it's exciting that we just are making progress, and every year we're getting more and more efficient and getting more and more fiber to the home and the business.
Great. You want to dive into some of those specific areas that have benefited from a new fiber connection this past year?
Duchesne City, we did a couple of areas that will benefit, and you can see those areas here on the southeast edge of town, and also along Main Street, headed west out of town on the south side. Many people will never forget all of the road construction through Gusher over the last year and a half, and that road project really impacted our facilities that we had in the highway, a lot of our copper, and we had fiber as well in the highway. And rather than spend money relocating and maintaining our copper facilities along that road, we made the choice to replace it all with fiber. And so this area in Gusher is now covered with fiber. Other areas in Roosevelt and Ballard that we hit this year are right here up in the Park Ridge area, the Ballard 1500 East, down 500 East in Roosevelt. The city was doing a project, and again, when the city or the county or the state is doing a road project, it often impacts our facilities, and we need to make a choice whether or not to maintain our copper or coax that's in that area, or bite the bullet and invest in fiber, and often that's what we choose to do. That's what we did in this case. Vernal, we've covered several areas that you can see, North Vernal Avenue, down on 4000 South.
And I think, to be clear on these maps, there's other fiber that exists in Vernal, right? You're only showing in these highlighted areas the areas that have been built in the past year.
Yes.
Important probably to emphasize.
I should have had a map of the existing fiber because it would show the extent of what we have covered with fiber. It's pretty extensive, but these are specific to 2020, what we've done in 2020. In yellow there, you can see a couple of areas that are in progress right now over in the Air Village area, and then also north of Main Street and east of Vernal Avenue. Anybody living in that neighborhood's probably seen our crews doing some work where we are in the process of fiber overbuilding those areas right now. So
cool. Great. Others? Okay, this next one's a big one.
This is definitely something that we need to talk about because it is a big event. This map shows, the Ashley Valley throughout Mazer, Vernal, Naples, and STRATA Networks has an existing coax network through the area shown. Anybody living in these areas today can get up to 100 megs of internet speeds, which is great, but a lot of people would like more. We are in the process of upgrading all of that plant to gig-capable speeds. So gig is 1,000 meg, 10 times their current highest available tier of 100 meg, right? Exactly.
And gig to a certain degree, gig on coax is similar to what we're offering on fiber right now, although fiber has capability to go much faster than gig. Yeah, we have gig fiber packages as well. So this would be comparable in many ways, right?
It'll be very comparable. The upgrade that we're doing, yes, it does improve the speed. It improves stability and dependability of the network, and so those folks living in these areas, they've got something to look forward to. We'll be turning that up soon and making gig available.
Great. So looks like it's most of Vernal. Is that 6,000
actually,
locations?
Yeah, there are about 6,500 locations in this footprint you can see here.
Awesome.
So 6,500 locations will soon, graduate from 100 meg to a gig.
Great.
So
Okay. Awesome. All right. Any other locations you want to mention? Or does that cover them?
that's quite a bit right
So
there.
that
That's
encompasses the 1,600 new locations that you talked about in 2020 that our
Yes.
crews were able to deploy.
One comment on that,
Yeah,
Tyler, if it's
please.
okay. So some listeners might be wondering, what about some of these rural areas that are excluded from these lists? And part of our plan for 2020 was to execute a significant number of fiber projects in the rural areas as part of the Reconnect announcement that we discussed previously. But a lot of those projects are on hold pending that environmental evaluation. So we hope that as we get through that process, we'll really be able to accelerate in these more rural parts of the Uintah Basin outside of the core areas that you've seen shown here. So hopefully we'll be able to provide good news to those folks very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So kind of the best part of what we want to talk about today in just our last few minutes is a new platform, I guess you could call it, that we've made available on our website about 4 months ago, John? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been about 4 months.
So for those of you who are not familiar with this, we want you to go to connect.stratanetworks.com and get familiar with this platform. So when we launched this 3 or 4 months ago, the purpose of the platform is to allow you, as the broadband consumer in the Uintah Basin, to help us better know where the highest demand exists for improved broadband services and or fiber optics, correct?
Yes.
So we launched this, like I said, 3 or 4 months ago with the commitment to the consumer that we would publish a number of what we're calling zones or areas. And each quarter, at the end of each quarter, we would select 2 from the list of those zones to be bumped into our construction and our design queue and construction queue and start down the path of getting fiber. So, and John, you might have a slide that helps people see this. So maybe just in 60 seconds, describe what a consumer needs to do to tell us that they're interested in getting fiber.
Okay. Yeah, you can go to connect.stratanetworks.com. Anybody who's already done it this page is familiar to you. But go in, put in your credentials, your address, and then click go. What it'll do is it registers your address and it's showing your interest. So it'll go to another page after this where you'll be able to put your interest in, put your email in, and it will register you and let us know that you're interested. What this does for us is we're able to see, basically we pull up these maps and we start seeing these pins start popping up on our maps. And as we see a cluster of pins from people who have registered their interest, it allows us to say, okay, we need to pay attention to this area. These people are asking for fiber. So we will definitely use this to help guide our decisions and prioritize projects. We need customers' input. We, for years, we make our decisions. We feel like we're doing the best we can to meet customer demand. There's so many factors pulling on our decisions and priorities, whether it be a city or a county or the state that's doing a road project. Well, we let that help prioritize a project. Or maybe our copper facilities are getting more and more expensive to maintain in an area. Maybe somebody has actually paid for the project, which is an option that people choose. So there's all these factors. Well, we want customers to give their input and help guide this decision. So if you call in and say, hey, I really want fiber in my area, we will direct you to this website and ask you to put your information in. And we'll also encourage you to talk to your neighbors. Mm-hmm. We can easily tell which areas are the areas where the neighbors are talking, because it starts spreading and we just start getting a lot of interest in those areas.
Awesome. So by signing up and registering their interest, the customer is like they're committing to taking a gig for 12 months. Is that correct? That's how they kind of show their interest?
Yes.
Okay. So there is a slight commitment on the consumer's end, but most consumers are thrilled if they're saying, I'd be happy to take gig for a year if you'll get it delivered to my home.
Yes.
So once again, the listener, when you go out to this page, you're going to see you may be in an area that does not have a defined zone. Many areas of the Uintah Basin have been already, you'll see on the map, like John's showing, there's already predefined zones that STRATA is considering, 15 or 20 or 30 zones. I don't know exactly how many there are, but individuals like John and Dave are looking at a number of factors, like he just said, and looking at all these zones, and they're trying to decide which ones to build this upcoming year. Now, you as the consumer can help direct that process by registering your interest and talking to your neighbors.
Yes, exactly. We get to, sometimes we go and build fiber in an area and we don't get, and people don't even increase their internet speeds. Mm-hmm. And so we recognize that they weren't that interested in that area, but mm-hmm. this is one way for us to see who is interested, who does need the speeds, and if we're not seeing interest in an area, we'll assume that people are happy with what they get in that area.
Mm-hmm. For now. Eventually, we want to fiber overbuild everything, right? Yes. But we definitely want to focus on those areas that have the greatest interest first. Okay, so here we are. We're at the end of that first quarter with the commitment we made 4 months ago to announce 2 zones that were the highest indication of interest. John, do you want to announce who the 2 zones are and kind of give them an idea?
I'd love to. I got to hear the drum roll.
Hey, do you have some sort of a sound effect? Oh, come on. We need better help back there. We'll come up with a sound effect next time. All right, Johnny, tell us which zones are at the top of the charts.
I'll tell you, there is one zone where it was apparent that the neighborhood got on board with this and quickly took the lead. And anybody that has been watching connect.stratanetworks.com, you're able to scroll down and see progress of zones who's been showing interest. And there was definitely one zone that really stood out, and it is zone number 1024. If you live in this zone, congratulations.
So some may not recognize this from the map. Can you describe roughly the address, John? Do you know it off the top of your head?
Right now you're looking at Vernal Avenue on the north end. You're looking at 3300 North on the south end. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's 2500 North. So that gives you a general idea. Just south of Steinecker. So.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
This neighborhood,
roughly how many homes in this zone?
You know what? I'm not even sure.
Gotcha.
But I will say, the neighborhood definitely got on board with this and talked to each other, and they got themselves signed up. So
great. Congrats, Zone 1024. All right. Who is number 2?
All right. Here's another one that, it took a few weeks where there was just no interest, and all of a sudden it started to take off. So whoever you are out there in this next zone that started talking to your neighbors, thank you, because it started to take off, and that is zone 1032, which is Duchesne City, the north half of Duchesne City. So congratulations, zone 1032. You guys up in the north part of Duchesne City, we'll start work to fiber overbuild your area.
That's awesome. So can you give them a general idea of how the process will look from here on out? Are they going to get fiber in 2 weeks?
I wish.
We got to set expectations appropriately.
I wish.
Right?
It definitely, let's set some expectations. If you've read the website, I believe it says that we will start the process within 6 months of this announcement. We will, I would say that's kind of being, we're
conservative on our end.
Conservative to cover ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, under promise and over deliver, right?
But we will start the engineering, start the permitting, and get ready, and fit it into. What it does is we always have a long list of construction projects in front of us. As we announce these zones, it helps us prioritize and bump them in front and get to them at a reasonable amount of time. for sure within that 6-month period. But
Yeah, okay, so 2 more other things just to quickly emphasize before we wrap up. That's awesome. I think this is great. I mean, once again, consumers, if you're interested in broadband, get on the website, register your address, talk to your neighbors.
it will definitely impact how fast you get fiber. We are using this to prioritize projects.
Yeah, so these are not the only fiber projects Strata will be doing in 2021, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
We want to make sure
There's-
that people understand that too.
this will be probably it will be a good portion, but it's a small percentage compared to everything else. There's so many other projects that we have going on right now, but these were directly impacted by customer influence. So
Okay. And then the second piece that we've mentioned a couple times, but we will be back here probably in the same podcast setting in probably April, as soon as the first quarter ends. And we'll be making another announcement for 2 more zones. So if you were close, if you were one of those zones that were right there, keep working at it. And if you look at your zone and there hasn't been much work done, get busy talking to your neighbors.
Yeah.
In 3 more months, we'll be working on another announcement for 2 more zones. So,
and again, if you find that you're not located in one of these zones, still register your interest. We can still see your address pop up, and we can still see clusters of interest, even though you're not in one of our predetermined zones. So, and it will guide our decisions. So
awesome. Okay. Dave, you've been quiet for a few minutes over there. How do you want to summarize this great conversation? We're at time, my friend. Any key points we've missed that you want to emphasize further?
I just think it's awesome that we're trying to utilize customer input to drive our decisions of where these build-outs are taking place. We've been trying to do that for years by gathering and collecting information when customers call in, but this gives us a real clear way of doing that and making sure that the information is all stored in one location. Customers can see how they're, how they are influencing those decisions directly by looking at, the percentages of interest that are shown on their zones. And it's just a really great step forward in involving the customer in the decision-making process for the prioritization of these fiber projects.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's honestly, it's fun to be able to work with the people that we work with, and see, and I think probably a lot of times the typical resident in the Uintah Basin maybe doesn't, and maybe Strata doesn't do a good enough job conveying this, but probably doesn't fully recognize and understand how much most Strata employees really do care about providing a wonderful service. There's a lot of people that work really hard. I know we've got a board of directors that's it's made up of residents of, people here in the Uintah Basin. They care about your service as much as anyone possibly could. A CEO and a management team that care immensely about improving services and delivering improved services, and right down to the employees that are out there digging in the dirt. I mean, they do a fantastic job and they care tremendously. So it's fun to watch that and fun to be involved in it. And our kudos and our appreciation needs to go out to them too, the ones that are doing all the work.
Yep,
so
for sure.
Well, we'll wrap this up. We hope this podcast has been beneficial to you. We definitely love feedback. If you have feedback, don't hesitate to drop us a comment. Shoot us an email at podcast@stratanetworks.com or reach out to us in any way. We'd love to talk about the topics that are most interesting to you, and we'll look forward to making another announcement in 3 more months.
it'll be great.
Appreciate you two joining me today.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
And thanks again to the listener for listening to the Strata Networks podcast.